Hi, I'm James McGuire, and on today's webcast, we're talking about a tech term that gets used a lot these days, but probably without much real understanding. The term is this: AI agent. What exactly is an AI agent? Does it do real work? Is it like a human? What is it? To answer that, I'm joined by Matt McLarty, the Chief Technology Officer for Boomi. Matt, absolutely thrilled to have you with us today.
Yeah, great to be here.
So I think there's certainly confusion around the term AI agent. I think it's used a few different ways. There's the robotic process automation world where there's AI agents or AI bots that are trained. There's a lot of AI agents in call centers that help out the staffers there. But how do you see the world of AI agents specifically? What distinguishes an agent from a traditional AI solution?
Yeah, I think first off, the reason it's so challenging to define things, I think, is that this is true for AI in general, but for AI agents especially, there's a giant gap between the promise and the vision of what AI agents can be and what AI can be in overall,
Right.
and then where we are today, right? So I think you brought up some good examples there. Everyone, I think, is familiar with the idea of chatbots, and maybe we don't have the best experience with chatbots. I don't know about you, but
They've never fooled us into thinking they're real. I never think, oh gosh, this is just like a human. Like, no, that has never happened to me.
No, they don't pass the Turing test most of the time. And
Right.
I think, and then, for those familiar with RPA and robotic process automation, the idea of bots coming mimicking human behaviors and other type of thing. I think the wave of AI agents that we're seeing now, why there's so much excitement and people get really far down the road on envisioning what could be, is because with LLM technology, with Gen AI technology, we've already seen that Turing test, that idea that machines can behave or think like humans, seems to be more possible than it was before. I think there's still plenty of time for debate on that topic. But I think for this from a practical standpoint, I think agents generally are about their name. It's about agency, about having machines or technology components that can act somewhat autonomously, can act through reasoning. So that's the idea of what agents can do. Now today, they're not so capable. Like, I think I'm a big believer in Gall's law. I'm not sure if you've heard of Gall's law.
No, I'm not familiar with Gall's law.
John Gall, this is the idea that every complex system that works has to evolve from a simple system that works. So we're really at the early stage. I think the grand vision of AI agents is going to be agent swarms, these multiple agents working together, figuring out complex problems, each with their individual task abilities or reasoning abilities, planning abilities. So we can envision these systems. But right now, we're really at the early stages of let's just kind of get the basic agents right to do simple things, but do them in a more reasoned way. And I think we have the technology in place to do that through LLMs and especially through the tools that they might use to do that. So what's new about agents today and why they're such a hot topic is that we've all seen the excitement around what LLMs can do. So what Gen AI can do, but that's all really in a natural language context. So you can go to ChatGPT and say, I have a cat. Here's the cat's name. Write me a Shakespearean sonnet about the cat.
Right.
Does a great job at that. But that's just language. For practical problem solving, we want them to get more into that automation space of either doing useful tasks on a personal level or in a business context. And the way that agents are being built, and there is sort of a general architecture that's being rolled out there around agents. They have the LLMs that they use, but in addition to the LLMs, they have data that grounds the LLM, so you can give more context to what the agent is capable of. They've got the ability to define a real clear scope for what an agent is supposed to do. I mean, an LLM can do anything, but if you make an agent that's totally focused on, let's say, onboarding new employees in your organization, that's a useful domain of functionality. And then the tools that it needs to do the job. And I think today, agents are the way that you can get the LLMs to actually do things that add value. I think that's from a practical standpoint, that's the reason why they're so exciting.
So you can sort of think about agents as the Metamind of an LLM. And I guess to follow up on that, I think there's a startup whose name escapes me at the moment, and they're trying to build this agent that will do a number of tasks for you all strung together. Like you want to buy a new refrigerator, This thing will shop for the refrigerator. It'll get the best deal. It'll actually oversee delivery to your house and a few other things. Maybe it'll cook an egg. I don't know. So the thing about this particular agent is that it's got to make some value decisions like, well, wait, I mean, delivery to the house. Should I pick a Tuesday or a Thursday? Do I know my owner well enough? So it seems like a real agent has some true reasoning capabilities built into it.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I would say that's probably a vision statement, right? Because I think that we're really at the art of the possible stage with Gen AI, overall. I think there's going to be a reckoning coming with Gen AI when people, or instead of saying, hey, you could do this with Gen AI, you could do that with Gen AI. I think we'll see, like in that example, the number of times you might require more information from the agent's client or user there's probably quite a few human in the loop steps there that would be required at this point.
Right.
Because they're only as good as the data that they have and only as good as the precision and contextualization of the data they have.
Right.
There's also the cost implications of like at scale. If you're a company and you run a bazillion LLM calls, it's not cheap. Mm-hmm. And then the things that go along that, the time, response time, environmental impact, even like there's all that stuff. So there will be a record.
Right.
I think that's what you just described that company is striving to do. Certainly is on the horizon that we should be aiming for. But I think that even today we're still just getting the basics of I think a really practical step we could take is today a lot of the automation that we do in the technology world is very strict. It's very static. We statically define. We might have conditional statements or rules-based logic that gets into, okay, if it's either A, B, or C. Mm-hmm. What the agent frameworks allow you to do is now just, instead of having more rigid decisions, you can, in case statements, like you can get into more sophisticated and dynamic routing logic about, given a particular context, given the set of things that you're able to do, tell me what the right thing is to do next, or the right sequence of things to do next, which is much more dynamic. It may not be as mind-bending and science fiction-y as some of the scenarios that are out there, but it's pretty practical.
Well, it would be labor saving. So I guess that brings us to the question. You've talked about this. What are the true strengths of agents? Specifically, how do agents collaborate to perform complex functions in sort of a first of its kind of way?
Yeah, I think this is where what I just described kind of fits this bill. Mm-hmm. And what I'm seeing in practice right now, and even this is sort of evident in even the tooling that's out there to build agents, as much as we talk about agents working with other agents, we're still just trying to get that basic setup right now where an agent has a set of tools. But so that's kind of the state of the industry right now. If you're building agents, it assumes that this agent, you just give it these tools, it's going to do the job. And that's kind of the practical implementations.
Right.
But if you think about it from the perspective of let's say you build a software component and you give it a tool to, what was the example you just gave there about buying a refrigerator, right? You might give it a tool to go, or a set of tools to go and look through different retailers to find what the fridges are and pull down the specs and so on. You might give it a tool to actually make the purchase and get your payment information. And you might give a tool to track shipping or something, like those are all different tools that you provide. And you could see where you could string together, you could build an agent that would, understand the user's preferences, come and do that, all those things. Mm-hmm. It's not a big leap though, from the perspective of the agent that's looking at these tools, to say an agent can be a tool, right? So I think this is where I think we'll kind of step our way towards this future where, because you don't care if it's a tool or if it's a person doing the job for you, right? What you care about is, I'm delegating a task.
Right.
And you can delegate a task to a tool, or you could delegate a task to another agent. So I think once we get this, I think the seeds are already planted there for how we get to that multi-agent future. But today, I think we're still kind of at the crawl stage of how we actually build these practical agents. Well,
so you're actually envisioning a world in which agents might be managing agents. Am I correct in thinking that?
Well, I think
agents are building agents, perhaps.
Agents are building agents. Agents are calling agents. I mean, there are people, like there's lots of research going on and experimentation around how you could give an agent one tool, and that tool would be to build tools that it needs. Right. So there's these meta scenarios that are out there. But I think when we think about how these things actually scale out in practical terms, we sometimes we need to take a little bit of time. We need to let things play out. Mm-hmm. And I think it's where I expect that even though we know that we're going to get to a point of total autonomy and meta autonomy around, like you said, autonomous systems that manage autonomous agents and so on. Right. I think we're a ways from that, but that's okay. I think what we're spending a lot of our focus on is today. I think a lot of the agent technology that's out there is very self-contained. Like even some of these systems where you have multi-agents, you have to run all the agents in a very proprietary, contained way. We know that the future, having worked in the enterprise space for a long time, you're going to need a lot of interoperability between these agents. And that's something that's not really clear out there. So I think we're focusing on how do you get not just groups of agents, but groups of agents that might live, some of them over in this hyperscaler cloud and this cloud over here, and you've running these proprietary agents and Python frameworks. How do you get those agents working together? And I think what I was just describing about agents looking at other agents as if they're just more tools is a way to get there. And my background is heavily in the API space, and we had our big Boomi World event in May. That was my big pithy tagline, was to say the AI economy is an API economy. I mean, we've spent a lot of time in the last more than a decade turning core software capabilities inside organizations into APIs so that they can be called. That's really the essence of how software functionality becomes tools. And I think as we API enable these agents that we're building, that's as well how things are going to all sort of be orchestrated and interoperate.
That is a fascinating angle, and I know we could really get down to the weeds on that one, but it's really, we are living in an API economy, and things are calling other things, and APIs are going every which way. That's another question. I just think it's fascinating. I want to make sure we talk about real-world implementation. How do you see customers implement AI agents? What are the challenges in particular, the major headaches?
We've already touched on one of the big ones is just like, this is great. We have technology that can act on its own. And then immediately, this is dangerous. We have technology that can act on its own.
Right.
So I think that there's a lot of, you have to be really careful about hallucination, because LLMs are by design they're creative in a way, and they don't like to tell you they don't know the answer. They're a lot like humans, right?
Right. A bot is like an egoistic human.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm not gonna admit I don't know the answer. I'm just gonna make it up. We've seen that before. Even just auditability and explainability, like who did what. I think that this is one of the, again, looking at that interoperability with that interoperability mindset where we live. With Boomi, we're connecting to all sorts of different systems, and our role in this AI agent ecosystem is to be like a tool provider, as well as, just kind of helping facilitate communication through these agents. Mm-hmm. You get some pretty complex authorization scenarios there. Like systems need to be authorized to talk to other systems, but at the same time, a lot of the permissions on core systems are based on user identities and making sure that people have the right privileges for that. Mm-hmm. In an agent world, how does that work? Are you going to issue credentials for the agent to actually have an Active Directory entry for an agent, or are you going to give the responsibility for all the actions of that agent to whoever the end user is, right? So there's some pretty complicated authorization considerations, and I think those are the types of next order problems that organizations will hit as they get deeper into the complexities.
Well, it seems like the agent would need authorization to go at up to a certain level. You couldn't rely on the end user. The agent would need to have the ability to have pretty fair amount of privileges, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and this is where, again, though, I think the experience in the API space helps, because we've had we've run into similar problems before, not necessarily with autonomous software components, but more when you've got an end user who's using a system that ultimately you're going to end up with some backend system, you don't want to just have propagate your credentials all the way through. So we've got token mechanisms and to do that. And we've got even ways of authorizing like the application to talk to the application, but then also propagating the identity of the end user. So I think it'll become a combination of that. Right now, where I would be leaning is I don't think we're ready yet for, I think there was what was the quote from IBM in 1979? There was a paper saying something like, you can't hold machines accountable for anything. So you can't hold computers accountable for anything. So you can't rely on them to make important business decisions. They're just not accountable. So I think the accountability, at this point, at least, we still need to attribute actions to whoever the end user was that triggered it. So in the case of the ordering the refrigerator, if there's some screw up along the way there, you can't really blame the agent. You're going to have to put it back on whoever issued the order to get that.
True. I want to ask about the future of AI agents in enterprise. And just listening to you speak, it brings up the idea that there's a lot of complexity going on here. I mean, IT has always been really complex. When you think about an agent having a certain amount of privileges, certain credibility, credentials, and then that brings in the issue of cybersecurity for the agents. Are they secure? Can they be hacked? And what it says to me is we're building some systems that are like wildly complex. Sometimes I think that the complexity of the systems may collapse unto themselves, but let's not go there.
We are kind of there, right? Like I think
we are.
Anyone working in the enterprise knows that it's never like a one system failure that causes the biggest problems. It's a little blip somewhere in a highly connected system that ends up with this sort of progressive meltdown scenario. I mean, this is just one of those things where software vendors, we're guilty ourselves of coming in and saying, simplify. I think that this is something we've done recently. Like we're just embrace the complexity. Like there's no way around it. I think that complexity gets a bad name. So I've been talking about complexity for a long time. There's a great paper from mid 80s by Brooks on there's no silver bullets, right? Mm-hmm. How we're always saying complexity is actually a great thing. Like the world is built on complexity. Biological systems are complex systems. Computer systems are complex systems. Mm-hmm. We solve really complex problems. Like there's the incredible things that we can do with computers is a result of our understanding of complexity. Mm. But you have to deal with complexity in the right way. You almost have to dance with complexity in the right way. And I think that agents, like many other components or agentic architectures, like other architectural practices, has to be, it's another modular architecture approach to software systems. And just like SOA 20 years ago and microservices launched 10 years ago, like we all have to recognize there's ways of dealing with these complex systems. So I think if you respect the complexity and understand that these agents are just more components that are going to fit into a very complex landscape, and you're honest with yourself about it, you'll do better than assuming that you can just gloss everything over with one agent that's going to hide, all the complexity goes away. It never goes away, but you can provide good levels of abstraction to help you deal with it more effectively.
Yeah, it's a good point. We'll never get away from the complexity. We're going to have to deal with it, and there it is. And as you said, nature systems itself is highly complex. So there you go. I want to make sure I get your thoughts on the future of AI agents in enterprise. Where do you see us going in the next, say, 1 to 3 years? I want to be able to say to you, my bot will call your bot. That will probably happen. What do you see in the immediate future?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think there's another. I keep bringing these quotes up. There's another quote about what we always overstate what we think is going to happen in the next couple of years and understate what happens in the next 10 years. So It's hard to put a timeline on it. I think the reason for that, I just co-authored a book that was put out recently called Unbundled Enterprise. We get into this a little bit. It's hard to sort of predict the future because there's so many pieces that have to come together. So I think understanding the authorization stuff, I said the API stuff, like there's all these schools of thought that have to converge around AI so we can see what the soup is that we bring all these ingredients. But I think that in the enterprise space, there's a lot of experimentation going on. I think that we will go through phases of like the actual happy path will be useful, maybe simple, but useful agents that can function together. We'll probably have some more inside the enterprise multi-agent systems to begin with. Mm-hmm. From a ecosystem standpoint, you will see these frameworks of, hey, you can, if you run everything on this platform, then you can do these agents working together. But I think, will it happen in 3 years? I hope so. I think that we'll have to break through that and like you said, start to get into more of an ecosystem opportunity where if I'm a company that's built some fantastic agent that's really good at a certain job, then how do I offer that out so that it can be consumed by these other companies and enterprises? And as an enterprise, how do I go get best of breed technology? That's really the big push that we're helping with. And I do think that's where ultimately things will go. How fast we get there, we'll see. But we have paved the road with APIs already, and I think that will be the path to getting this interoperability of agents.
No doubt about the APIs. Like the road has been paved by APIs. Matt, I think you said it. Fascinating stuff. Really, really interesting. Thank you for sharing your expertise, and please come back and talk with us again sometime.
I would love to. Thanks for the opportunity.